Hi everyone, my name is Sandra Weiss and I'm going to be doing my presentation today on the two faces of holy war. The Christian and Muslim religions are both monotheistic religions, but other than that the similarities end there. The Muslims believe that Jesus Christ was merely another prophet. They believe that Muhammad is the final and ultimate prophet and Jesus is just a messenger of God and not the Son of God. Christians believe that they believe in the trilogy, God the Father, Jesus the Son of God, and the Holy Spirit, and they believe that Jesus died on the cross to forgive them of all their sins. The Muslims do not believe in that. Both religions believed in spreading their faith by peacefully. Muhammad counseled his followers to use wisdom and beautiful preaching to make converts. And Apostle Paul encouraged Christians to follow after things that make peace, and through your mercy they may also obtain mercy. In the beginning, Muslims and Christians coexisted peacefully for many years. Neither believed in raising a sword to spread their faith. Eventually, perceptions and stereotypes degraded that peace and fueled violence between the two religions. Christians and Muslims started a holy war and began spreading their faith by force. These stereotypes created by both Muslims and Christians fanned the flames of fear and hostilities between the two groups. They may have originally contained a small grain of truth, but that element has since been exaggerated and distorted or taken out of context in some way. Stereotypes depersonalize and dehumanize people. This helps to paint the picture that the group is evil and not to be trusted. Both Christians and Muslims had developed terrible stereotypes about each other. Evidence of these stereotypes and perceptions can be found in written accounts of the Crusades. Muslims believe that Christians were barbaric animals lacking in sense. Evidence of this can be found in source number 1, Usama ibn Munkid's description of the Franks. One of the Franks offered to take Usama's 14-year-old son back to his homeland in order for him to learn wisdom and chivalry. Usama politely declined, but thought the idea was ludicrous. He would rather his son be captured by the Franks than to actually go with them willingly. Usama was also shocked by the Franks' medical practices. He tells of a soldier with an abscess on his leg that the Muslim doctor treated with a poultice and it was beginning to heal. A Frank physician came along, placed the leg on a block of wood, and proceeded to chop off the leg with an axe, after which the soldier immediately died. Another example is of a woman who was afflicted with imbecility. She was seen by the Frank physician, who then stated that she had the devil in her head and proceeded to shave off all of her hair. When she did not get any better, he went ahead and carved the cross into her skull and peeled the skin back and rubbed salt inside the wound. It is said that the woman died immediately after that. Another example of the Franks' senseless, barbaric behavior is exhibited by the case of a man who was being charged with the assassinations of Frankish pilgrims. They bound the man up in ropes and dropped him into a cask filled with water. They believed that if he sunk, then he was innocent and they would pull him out. But if he floated, he was guilty and he would be punished. They threw the man in. He tried as much as he could to sink, but he was unable to. He was floating, so they took him and they pierced out his eyes with red-hot owls. All of these examples would definitely put the fear of the Franks into the hearts of the Muslims. These depictions portray very senseless, savage people who are no better than animals. The Muslims believe the Christians were fierce and fanatical. Evidence of this is found in source number 2, Ibn al-Athir's account of the capture of Jerusalem. When the Franks realized they were going to lose Jerusalem to the Muslims, they sent a convoy to Saladin and asked for safe passage out of the city if they surrender. Twice Saladin refused them, at which time the Franks then threatened to kill all of their children and wives. all their Muslim prisoners, about 5,000 of them, and every horse and animal that they possessed. They would then burn all of their possessions so that the Muslims would not get a single coin or enslave a single man or woman. They would then fight to the death, and if not, win with honor. Saladin granted the request as long as each person paid some dinars to him. Then he would let them go free. If they were unable to pay the amount that he requested, then they would remain enslaved to him. The Muslims must have thought that they were crazy to go to such extremes as killing their own wives and children and burning all of their own possessions. And so they just went ahead and granted their request. The Muslims thought that the Christians had a fanatical reverence for the cross. Source number 3, Imad ad-Din's History of the Fall of Jerusalem is the source. They felt that Christians worshiped the cross as if it were God himself. They kept it housed in a casing of gold, adorned with pearls and gems, and it was brought out for many ceremonies. They threw themselves before it, went into ecstasies, and fainted at its appearance. Its capture was the worst blow that they could receive, worse than the loss of their own king. When the cross was captured, it said that they lost all will and gave up completely. The Muslims could not understand how the Christians could place so much emphasis on a material item such as a cross and believe that their worship of it was fanatical. Muslims believe that Christians were unclean and immoral. Source number 3, Imad ad-Din's History of the Fall of Jerusalem shows evidence of this. They describe how 300 Frankish women arrived to Jerusalem by ship, and they were all, dressed very provocatively and scantily and full of all kinds of makeup, and they were just very seductive. He describes them as beautiful harlots offering themselves to sin, that they were making love and selling themselves for gold. They also describe how many women rode into battle dressed in men's clothes and fought like men, that they even acted, masculine like men, so much so that they thought they couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman until they stripped off their armor. Then they would realize it was a woman. And they said there was quite a few of them that did that. Muslim women would never dress provocatively or offer themselves for sex. They also thought it was immoral for the women to be dressed as men and fighting in the war as if they were men. These are all things that were against the Muslim belief and would be very, they consider it very unclean and very immoral of the Christians. The Christians also had terrible stereotypes about Muslims. Christians believed Muslims were bloodthirsty, violent savages who killed senselessly. Evidence of this can be found in source number 4, Peter Toubaud, History of the Jerusalem Journey. When a noble knight, Reynald Porchet, refused to turn apostate, the emir Yagi Sian had him beheaded. He then had all of the Christian pilgrims in Antioch brought before him. He had them stripped nude, bound with ropes, and placed in a circle. He then piled hay and firewood all around them and proceeded to burn them alive. After this, the Christians held a procession for all of the murdered Christians. The Saracens mocked them and screamed and even made a wooden cross and began beating it with sticks and smashing it against the wall until it shattered. These acts would definitely be upsetting to the Christians and would likely portray the Muslims as senseless, bloodthirsty savages who kill without any reason. Christians believe that Muslims were religious fanatics who would kill anyone who goes against their values and beliefs. Evidence of this can be found in source number 6, William of Tyre, A History of Deeds Done Beyond the Sea. A Muslim man wanting to get the Christians in trouble threw a dog carcass into the temple court. This was very sacrilegious and of great offense to the Muslims as they maintained the court and city scrupulously clean, and this was an unclean item thrown right into their sacred place. The Muslims immediately blamed the Christians for the act and demanded that they all be put to death to atone for such a sacrilege. One Christian man decided to sacrifice himself and said that he was the one that committed the crime. He did this in order to save the lives of the other Christians by proving that they were innocent and that he was the only one that committed the crime, thereby saving their lives. And he was put to death. The Christians believe that Muhammad was a false prophet and a deceiver. Source number 6, William of Tyre, A History of Deeds Done Beyond the Sea. William of Tyre describes Muhammad as the firstborn son of Satan, who falsely declared that he was a prophet sent from God, that he led astray the lands of the East by sowing his poisonous seed. He claimed that he spread his faith by sword instead of preaching and exhortation. The Christians believe that Muslims were cowardly and greedy. Evidence of this can be found in source number 5, Fulcher of Chartist, A History of the Expedition to Jerusalem, 1095 to 1127. Fulcher describes how when they entered the city, the Saracens were terrified and made headlong flight swiftly through the streets with the Franks in pursuit. He describes them jumping from the top of the wall, hiding in the temples, and even climbing on top of the Temple of Solomon. These depictions give the image of the Saracens being cowardly and running instead of fighting the Christians. Fulcher describes how they found the Saracens had swallowed all of the gold coins they had found. They had found them inside of their intestines. This could be perceived as greedy, as they were trying to conceal all of the gold for themselves. This whole account told by the Christians could be seen in a different light by the Muslims, as they would say they are barbaric savages killing everyone in sight. Fulcher describes how they killed everyone, sparing neither woman or child, how they even killed those begging for mercy. He describes them as falling like rotten apples from a tree. He also describes how if you were there, your feet would have been stained to your ankles with the blood of the slain. This would paint a horrific scene to the Muslims, who would have viewed the Christians as merciless killers of women and children and thought of them as savages with no heart. Fulcher's description of cutting open the bellies of the dead Saracen is also a gruesome scene. They, tired of cutting each of the bodies open to retrieve the gold and stuff, so they decided to heap them all into a giant pile and burn them all, making it much easier to retrieve the gold, after they were all burned up into ashes. This would give an evil impression of the Christians as they are desecrating the Saracens' bodies. It would also show how greedy the Christians were to cut open people's intestines to get their gold. Both the Christians and Muslims had developed similar impressions and stereotypes of each other that were very negative. These stereotypes fanned the flames of fear and suspicion and paranoia, further increasing animosity between the two groups. Both sides committed heinous acts of atrocities against one another, creating a holy war where the Muslims and Christians tried to spread their faith with hatred and violence. And that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed my thing. Thank you and have a good day.